At their convention, they had union leaders and CEOs. They had Democratic Party icons and lifelong Republicans.
Jon Stewart just roasted the DNC on The Daily Show, and it was absolutely brutal and hilarious. He didn't just call out the party's glaring double standards, he dragged Kamala Harris along with them.
The Democrats had people who prosecuted sexual predators and...
When someone like Stewart turns this hard on his own party, you know the cracks are getting harder to hide. And trust me, we've got all the juicy details. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss clips like this.
They had a guy yelling, "Screw the billionaires," followed immediately by a very happy billionaire.
The contradictions? Off the charts. The Democratic Party is full of them. That's why I often call them performative. They bend over backwards to pander to every group imaginable, and in doing so, lose any real sense of identity. They claim to champion progressive values, yet their actions often take us in the opposite direction. And Jon Stewart, he calls it out with precision and humor. That's what makes his takedown so refreshing. While most of the media and late-night hosts like Jimmy Kimmel are too scared to touch these topics, Stewart shows real guts. It takes courage to challenge your own side, especially when groupthink runs the show. But he's not afraid to ask uncomfortable questions, and that's exactly why his voice stands out.
We need an economy that works for all of us, not just the billionaire class. My fellow Americans, when 60% of our people live paycheck to paycheck, the top 1% have never, ever had it so good.
And then there's Bernie Sanders, a man worth millions, enjoying elite perks while railing against the elite. It's the same old fiery rhetoric and emotional theatrics, but with zero real substance. The Democrats love to rage against billionaires, unless those billionaires are cutting checks for them. Take Michael Bloomberg, a literal billionaire who pours money into the party whenever it suits him. Funny how his name never comes up during their Eat the Rich speeches. This is peak selective outrage. Wealth is evil unless it's propping up their own power. If that's not hypocrisy, I don't know what is. Bernie likes to play the outsider, but he's been part of the club for decades. Events like these conventions, just political theater for the masses.
The Democrats had people who prosecuted sexual predators and...
And here's the kicker. President Bill Clinton, whose legacy is haunted by sexual misconduct allegations, sharing a stage with Kamala Harris, a former prosecutor known for locking up sex offenders. The irony practically writes itself. One has a scandal-ridden past, and the other is eyeing the presidency while claiming to champion justice. The contradiction couldn't be more obvious. But Stewart didn't stop there. He pointed out another blatant double standard. While DNC members love to chant about the liberation of Palestine and post hashtags, not one Palestinian voice was given meaningful representation at their convention. How does that line up with their claims of diversity and inclusion? It doesn't. And Stewart called it out. The DNC loves to posture, but when it's time to walk the talk, they vanish.
Let us choose joy!
Yes.
Right after the DNC proudly declared itself the Party of Joy, Palestinian Americans began speaking out, saying they felt ignored and erased. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib put it bluntly, "It's hard not to feel invisible as a Palestinian American. Our trauma and pain feel unseen and ignored by both parties. One party uses our identity as a slur and the other refuses to hear from us. Where is the shared humanity? No representation, no voice, just silence." The optics were brutal. The DNC can shout inclusivity all day long, but when a group they claim to support is completely shut out, the message is clear. It's performative at best and hypocritical at worst. And just when you think the contradictions can't get any worse, here comes Kamala Harris blaming Trump for the war in Ukraine. even though she and Biden had already been in office for 2 years.
He encouraged Putin to invade our allies, said Russia could, quote, do whatever the hell they want. 5 days before Russia attacked Ukraine, I met with President Zelensky to warn him about Russia's plan to invade. I helped mobilize a global response over 50 countries to defend against Putin's aggression. And as president, I will stand strong with Ukraine and our NATO allies.
Kamala isn't just the queen of word salads, she's the monarch of empty promises. At the very moment she was making grand statements about diplomacy and stability, she was the sitting vice president, and foreign policy was falling apart. Lives lost, chaos abroad, confusion at every level. Her claim that Trump somehow caused the Ukraine war, totally dishonest. He wasn't in office, had no control over the State Department, no say in U.S. policy. The decisions fell to her and Biden, and yet they still dodge responsibility like it's a sport. Blaming others is easy. Owning failure, that's the hard part, and Kamala's track record says it all. Unfortunately, this deflection game isn't limited to the politicians. It's infected the media too, especially the echo chamber that is MSNBC.
You're at MSNBC. Do they come to you every day and go, here's what we think is important to preserve and fight for whatever?
No, everybody gets a zillion press releases and pitch calls, but no.
No. I'm talking about the head of it.
Oh, no. You determine, we determine, each of us for our shows, here's what I'm going to cover today, and here's what I'm going to talk about, and here's what I think is important, which there's an independence-ish of that, and there also is, you're not waiting to be told what to say about anything. You're going to say what you think. So people can trust that, and that is a good thing.
See, I disagree with that. I think it's not that you're able to be independent, it's that you're then a prisoner purely to the minute by minutes. Purely
You mean
to
in terms of ratings?
Ratings, incentives, and all those other things. If you don't have the ideological component, right, then you don't have a governing authority of editorial authority, right? The greatest trick Roger Ailes ever played was he delegitimized editorial authority while exercising absolute steel trapdoor editorial authority.
The greatest thing he did, because it led them to be an arm piece, a mouthpiece of the right wing.
It led them to be exactly what he wanted it to be, which is an effective expression of his worldview.
And MSNBC, I am unburdened by not having, I can share whatever I think. I have obviously worked in Democratic politics for 20 years. I don't hide anything about that. It is a progressive leaning network. But nobody is, to the frustration at times of many elected Democrats, it is not a mouthpiece of the Democratic Party.
If you've been following our content, you already know. Jen Psaki has been flat out lying. We've laid it out. Point by point, MSNBC functions like a PR arm for the Democratic Party. Even Bill Maher, not exactly a right-winger, has called them out for their hypocrisy and bias. But are we surprised by Psaki's latest spin? Not even a little. She lives in an echo chamber where everyone agrees, and dissent is treated like a foreign language. She's out of touch, plain and simple. Americans see through this. They're tired of being spoon-fed narratives disguised as truth.
In 4 hours of Joe Scarborough shouldn't be allowed in this country. and then like Rachel Maddow, like it's schizophrenic at times. Like, yeah, I do think there should be some semblance of an idea that, look, they're kicking progressive ass right now. And if progressives don't organize their media, their think tanks and all that, it's going to continue to happen. It's chaos.
Look, I can understand if MSNBC wants to lean left. Most media outlets have biases. Fine. Just be honest about it. But what's infuriating is how they insist they're neutral. That's not just misleading, it's dishonest. They pretend to report the news while pushing a very clear agenda. Dissenting voices get silenced or spun into absurd caricatures. This isn't journalism. It's narrative control. And the pretense of fairness, it's laughable. Sure, bias exists on both sides. But pretending it doesn't exist, that's the real problem.
I will say, broadly speaking, what I'm going to say Democrats, I'm going to say people on the left do not do that the right does very well, is support within the system each other. I'm serious. And what I mean by this is this, right?
Yeah.
Theo Vaughn appears on Joe Rogan's show, right? He promotes what Joe Rogan's doing, but they all promote all of the things each other are doing and what the elected officials, I guess, are doing too. And the left is a little bit more kind of discombobulated in terms of supporting the different entities on the left. There is not a left ecosystem that matches the right ecosystem.
But Ailes didn't do that either. It was the principle, the ideological principles, not the party. He and Murdoch the same way. They're promoting an ideological worldview, right? That they believe is correct. And Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan, I think, are different animals than any of this. I wouldn't say I don't think they're part of any machine.
Just look at Stewart's face when Jen Psaki brings up Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan as examples of right-wing media. He looks baffled, and who can blame him? That moment says everything. This is the modern left's problem in a nutshell. The belief that if someone questions the narrative, they must be a conservative. It's lazy, it's dishonest, and it shuts down real dialogue. Theo Vaughn is a comedian. Joe Rogan talks to everyone: scientists, conspiracy theorists, presidential candidates. But because they're not lockstep with the progressive script, they get labeled as right-wing operatives. It's absurd. This mindset isn't just intellectually weak, it's toxic. When disagreement is treated like betrayal, the echo chamber becomes a prison. Jon Stewart's takedown of the DNC and his response to Jen Psaki revealed something deeper: performative politics, media hypocrisy, and an increasing intolerance for dissent. When comedians get labeled right-wing for simply asking honest questions, you know something's broken, and more people are waking up to it. The illusion is cracking. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe. There's a lot more coming your way. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.